Hi guys, welcome back to Murder in Retrograde. This week we've got quite a tale. Brittany, we're gonna switch things up a little bit. Brittany's gonna basically tell us everything, and I am you. I am the listener today. So I really don't know anything about this. So I'm really excited to hear about it because it's super interesting. So let's just get to it.
I'm Brittany Sheffrin,
I'm Jenna Kaplan.
and this is Murder in Retrograde.
Woo-hoo.
Welcome back, everybody. So, today we're going to talk about a story that is riveting to me from the day that it happened. I have been completely obsessed, and now I feel like I have a PhD in it after researching for this episode. So, hopefully, I do this story justice. This is the story of the disappearing flight of Malaysian Airlines Flight 370. So, this story is fascinating to me, and I will try my hardest not to completely geek out because I'm also very interested in aviation, and studying, researching this sent me down a rabbit hole on YouTube. I've sent Jenna, I don't know how many text messages of videos of different flight things that have happened in flight. I'm sure you haven't watched a single one, have you?
No. Okay, and I know it's terrible. I know it's terrible. This kind of stuff usually does not strike my fancy. And like, especially during this, I was like pregnant and things were going on, so I wasn't paying attention. But I do find it fascinating when you think of it in a big picture kind of thing. But so I'm interested to hear all the details because I haven't watched anything yet. I'm just here. I'm brand new.
Okay. So this Malaysian airplane was a Boeing 777 with 227 passengers and 12 crew members aboard. And then, okay, we already have an ADD sidebar. You're going to have to keep me on track here.
I have a question too.
Go for it.
Is this the one that's been in the news kind of in like the last year, this Boeing 777 with all of the electrical issues and stuff, and then they have to like pull it for a while or something? Or am I thinking of something
Yes.
else? Okay.
No, that's exactly what this is. It's been in the news a lot in the past year. They actually grounded all of them. You're right. So it's also called the 777, and it has a lot of flight time. It's amassed over 35 million hours since they first took to the skies in 1994. It flies at a speed of 560 miles an hour, and it was the first commercial aircraft designed entirely by a computer, which I thought was interesting. Over 50 different airlines fly this in their fleet. It's like known as a very well, it was known prior to the last 2 years and the things that you were speaking to
Mhm.
as one of the safest planes there is. And it was kind of like everybody's kind of heard of the 747. That used to be like the gold standard. And now it's the 777 because obviously way more people are flying at this point. And the 777 has a second story. So, it's considered a technical marvel because it's the world's biggest twin jet, and it's powered by the most powerful engines in the history of aviation. It's kind of mind-blowing to me, but again, I know I'm digressing. And it can also do double duty as a cargo carrier, which it's been doing during COVID. It's been bringing like tons of supplies and food to different people in different countries. And then what you were just speaking to in the news lately, there was a Denver flight where the engine fell apart and caught fire mid-flight. Remember that? There was a guy
Mhm.
that took a video of it. And then the same thing happened on another flight just outside of Honolulu, Hawaii, which thankfully landed safely, as did the one in Denver airport. Another 777 had engine issues recently in Japan, but they landed safely. So to put that in perspective, it's a tiny amount, like 0.4% of the 1,412 777s ever produced have ever been involved in crashes or incidents that left the plane damaged beyond repair. So compare that to 4% of the 1,500 747s that have been written off over the years. So it's extremely powerful, that statistic. It's a very reliable plane and very safe. So, moving on to this story. On March 8th, 2014, this flight left Malaysia at 12:41 a.m. local time out of Kuala Lumpur. It reached cruising altitude of 35,000 feet at 1:01 a.m. local time in Malaysia, which was about 30 minutes into the flight at this point, which is standard, right?
Mhm.
And located on every airplane is the system called ACARS, which stands for Aircraft Communication Addressing and Reporting System. Some of you may have heard of it. It's just the primary function of it is to record every flight for the duration of the flight, and it kind of pings off the ground so you know where the flight path was. It also tells you how much fuel was in the plane, like during the entire flight, and all of these different things. And the way that it gets all of that information is that there are sensors located all over this plane. It's very high tech. Like I said, it was the first one built by a computer, which is one of the reasons it's so safe. So, this ACARS system can be turned off manually by someone, but there's usually a backup, as there was on this flight, and that one showed a pretty bizarre course. At 1:19 a.m., the final communication comes from flight MH370 is what it's known as. It's the call numbers for the flight. So you have to notify countries when you enter or exit an airspace, or their airspace, rather, which was the final communication from Malaysia. At 1:21 a.m., just 2 minutes after that last communication, the plane's transponder, which communicated with air traffic control, was manually switched off.
But like, why?
Well, the plane's flight path immediately changed. It was about to enter Vietnamese airspace over the South China Sea, but at 1:30 a.m., Malaysian military and civilian radar began tracking the plane because it piqued their interest, as it had turned abruptly and then flew southwest over the Malay Peninsula, and then it turned again sharply northwest over the Strait of Malacca. And incidentally, the way that this after that second turn, it flew right over this island where the captain, the pilot, grew up, where he was born, unfortunately.
But according to that, I mean, it does look like it goes up and then down and kind of around, does like this weird little turn situation. So it's interesting.
Yeah, they're fairly certain that it did take these two turns. And one of them was 2 minutes after they had spoken to the Malaysian air traffic control, who said, "Good night, Malaysian 370. Please contact Vietnamese ground control," because they were supposed to be going over Vietnam to China
Sure.
because they were supposed to be landing in Beijing. But at this point, they're going in the complete opposite direction, headed towards Australia. They're going south.
Weird.
So, okay, so stay with me. I know there's lots of mumbo jumbo. There's a satellite called the Inmarsat satellite, and it has a geostationary orbit, and it is constantly tracking everything that's flying around Earth and where it is and all of that information. And at this time, at 2:22, that system pinged that this plane was over the Indian Ocean, which would mean that it was continuing south, again, going the opposite direction of where it was supposed to be going, China. And then those signals were last detected by the plane at 8:11 a.m. the next day, because obviously it never landed in China. It just disappeared.
So okay, so it's detected for the last time ever at 8:11 a.m.
That was the last signal that the plane ever sent to the satellite in the sky. And then the satellite lost it.
Hmm.
So you can evade radar and you can evade these things. Clearly, one of them was already turned off. So
Right.
it seems like it was manually turned off. Somebody didn't want them to know where this plane was going. So, initial searches for the plane concentrated on the South China Sea, as it was determined that the Flight 370 had turned to the west shortly after the transponder had been switched off. So, search efforts were kind of around that area right at the second turn. A week after the plane had disappeared, on March 15th, that same satellite, the Inmarsat satellite, contacts were revealed to the public that it had been contacted, and that's where it was over the Indian Ocean. Analysis from the signal could not locate the plane precisely, but did determine that the plane might have been anywhere on two arcs. So that's kind of how the people that come in, like the NTSB, try to find wreckage after a plane crash. You have to, I guess it's like following the jet streams, right? So it's like an arc that goes around the globe. So they figured out brilliantly. This is all so fascinating how they can do this so quickly. But it was supposed to be located over two arcs. One of them stretched from Java southward into the Indian Ocean and southwest of Australia. And then the other one stretched northward across Asia from Vietnam to Turkmenistan. So, two entirely different accounts of where this plane was going, based on analysis and signals from different places, from the satellite, from the ground, that sort of thing.
I
So
wonder.
does that make sense?
I kind of. I wonder if. Okay, so they're pinged off the satellite at 8:11. I mean, have they figured out, okay, how much gas would be in the, I mean, is it gas in the tank, right? Is that fuel, whatever it's called, to get, and how
No, because he
far they
turned that
would get?
off.
Oh, so they have no idea if even how much fuel they had.
That was manually turned off. There
That's
was a
part of that
backup,
reporting system.
but I don't, it doesn't seem like they had that old school backup in real time. You know
Yeah.
what I mean? So they have these two flight paths that are in totally different directions that I guess it's possible that the plane went in.
So sorry, my next question. Do you know, did they automatically assume it crashed somewhere, or that someone went rogue and they just didn't know where it was, or we don't know?
They didn't know. They didn't say. They said that they hadn't ruled out terrorism. They hadn't ruled out a hijacking. They but they did say a few days later, I think maybe 5 days later, that they assumed the plane had crashed and all lives were lost because these search efforts were ridiculous. I mean, the search area just kept expanding. Granted, they were looking in the wrong area at first, so they wasted a lot of time looking around Thailand because they know that the plane had gotten a lot farther. So the search area expanded to the Indian Ocean, southwest of Australia, on the southern arc, and Southeast Asia, Western China, and the Indian subcontinent, and Central Asia on the northern arc. So the search area is like half the globe. You
And
know,
a lot
it's,
of water, right? Because that's where I
yes.
would imagine there's going to be a hell of a chance to find a plane crash in water. I feel like that's going to be so hard.
Yeah,
Mm.
yes. I know that they can see oil slicks, and those can be seen from really far away. So there are ways of looking at it, and I would imagine in today's age that we have like drones that can do that instead of wasting so much fuel on and having somebody manually look on a plane. But you're absolutely right. It's a complete open ocean. I it seems completely overwhelming, and clearly it was because they could not find anything. On March 24th, Malaysian Prime Minister Najib Razak announced that based on the Inmarsat final radar and with the help of the UK Air Accidents Investigation Branch, they had they had concluded that the flight crashed in a remote part of the Indian Ocean 1500 miles southwest of Australia.
Yeah.
So clearly, it was extremely unlikely that anyone on board survived the crash. And the search for wreckage was hampered by the remote location of the crash site, like you said, in the middle of the ocean. You
Yeah.
know,
That's
it's
got to be so tough.
a month after the crash on April 6th. An Australian ship detected several acoustic pings, possibly from the Boeing 777's flight recorder or black box, about 1,200 miles northwest of Perth, Western Australia. So now the black box sends these pings off for several days after a crash, and it can go through anything. They've been found on the sides of mountains, in the bottom of the ocean. So some pings were coming from this area, but then people also or the satellites were hearing things in other places. So it's just so mysterious that they couldn't find any sign of it, and there was no calls for help, and nobody was coming forward saying we're a terrorist organization and we are claiming this. It seemed so strange, and a lot of people thought, oh, it's the Malaysian government, something went wrong. There was also talk that possibly the US had shot it down, thinking that it was nefarious after it took that sharp turn, because it was over Thailand. It was in Thailand airspace, which is an ally of ours, and we have fighter jets there that we could potentially go up and look at a plane like that. And some people say that that did happen, but it hasn't been substantiated by anybody. But bizarre, right?
I mean, I find it to be interesting that they thought it was like kind of near Australia somewhere, and then that's where pings were coming from. So it seems like it's reasonable to think that that could be it, right?
Right.
I don't know.
So, and if these pings were truly from MH370, that would mean the flight recorder was likely at the very end of its battery life because they were so weak, the battery was dying. Further searches were immediately conducted using a robotic submarine where the pings came from and over a vast area after the fact, and they didn't find anything at all. So finally, tests found that a faulty cable in the acoustic equipment could have produced these
Oh,
pings to
jeez.
begin with. So it's like always something like that, right? I can't imagine how frustrating that was for the searchers. But those things happen constantly. Even in these true crime cases, you're following a lead, and then it's like, oh my gosh, why didn't you put the tape in the surveillance
Oh
thing?
my
You know what I
God.
mean?
Yeah.
So, theories at this point, like I said, ranged from mechanical failure to terrorism. And the loss of the ACARs, the sharp turns, the transponder signals propelled ongoing speculation of hijacking. But again, nobody had come forward.
I feel like with
And
hijacking and terrorism, sorry to interrupt, someone's going to claim responsibility. No one's going to do something to just do it. At least that's how I don't know. I feel like every time there's been something, someone's taking responsibility in a sense, or who, but like this doesn't seem like that to me.
but those are the ones we know. If people
No,
have done it
right.
and not, but a plane has never disappeared that I could find. Like this has never occurred. So,
I feel like that it
what?
cannot be true. There's got to be more than just this plane that's just disappeared. Isn't there like the whole thing with Bermuda Triangle and stuff? Isn't planes disappear?
I'm talking about commercial
Oh,
airliners,
oh, oh,
like with
okay, okay,
people on
okay.
it. So, okay, the then rumblings came of what could have possibly happened. And people started looking to the captain, the pilot, and the first officer, who is the co pilot, or possibly the cabin crew. But nothing suspicious was found in their behavior, and it just didn't seem to make any sense. So a year passes, and a piece of debris washes up on July 29th, 2015, in an island off the coast of, well, I don't know if it's yeah, it's kind of off the coast of Madagascar. Okay, so on your way to Africa. So very far from the search area, which was
What
the
was
Indian Ocean.
what was the debris? Like what was it?
It was the right wing flaperon, and it was discovered on a beach and on the French island of Reunion. It's 2,300 miles west of the Indian Ocean, where authorities had searched for the plane initially.
Hmm.
And it's a pretty large piece. You can see it in that image there if you look, Jenna. It took 4 men to carry it.
Oh yeah.
And as the next year and a half passed, more than 25 pieces of debris were found on the shores of Tanzania, Mozambique, South Africa, Madagascar, and I never know how to say this island.
Mm,
More,
More
more.
Mortisa? I don't know. I'm so bad. I don't know.
Obviously, neither of us watched Survivor because Survivor was there at one point. However, only 3 of the 27 pieces were able to be positively identified as coming from Flight 370 because, Jenny, you know way more about Africa than I do, but wouldn't you imagine once they found a few pieces of debris that people would come out and say, "Oh, I found another one." I mean, anywhere they would do that, but can't you see that happening?
I mean, maybe it's like a small town. I mean, I mean, but I think anywhere, if you're finding big, huge pieces of plane, you're gonna be like, what the hell? Like, I don't think it's like a
Yeah, no, I'm saying
normal
like,
thing to find.
but I'm just saying because they couldn't positively identify that they were all actually from this plane. I do think it's possible some crazy people were like, "Look, it's a piece of the plane," and just.
Like
Are
made
you
it
with
up?
me? Are you? Yes.
Oh, I didn't get that. But yeah, no, I mean, no, I don't see people just lying about it because I don't feel like, I don't know. I don't feel like necessarily everyone, especially in other countries, were like, oh my God, what happened to the plane? Like, I don't know that people cared. I mean, as terrible as that is, I don't know. I don't know. I don't remember.
Another ADD sidebar because you're wrong. People would make stuff up because when the Berlin Wall fell, which I'm sure you don't remember, I don't even think you were alive. My dad had this dumb piece of concrete,
Oh, did
and
he
for a
say it was
good 10 years, he'd be like, "Here, you see this? It's a piece of the Berlin Wall." And then he would look at all of us because we knew this dumb joke. He'd be like, and
Yeah,
the
but
person
that's
would be like,
the Berlin Wall.
"Wow."
That's like a huge piece of history. I don't feel like maybe when this was happening, how many people
Listen,
knew about it.
just because you were having a baby and nothing else was happening, because this did happen when Jenna was having her babies or when she was pregnant and at the end. So I'm not surprised at all. I don't remember, I don't know anything in the news from when I was having a kid, but this was huge news. Like the whole world was like, where is this plane? It was on the cover of newspapers across the world.
Really?
So it was a big deal. Yes, it was a huge deal. Yeah. From all of the debris that was found, they were able to determine that the plane did not undergo a controlled descent, meaning that it hit the water going very fast. It was not like some sort of mechanical failure where they tried to do a Captain Sully and land on the water. The debris locations were used to narrow the search area in the Indian Ocean, since some possible crash sites would have been unlikely to produce debris that would have drifted to Africa. So, all of these things that they're finding out are just making them completely change the route of like, okay, no, it wasn't over here. Oh, wait, it pinged over there. So, I think that's people are so interested in this. It's a mystery, it's bizarre, it doesn't make any sense. So eventually, this led to a search effort stretching from the Indian Ocean west of Australia to Central Asia, massive open ocean. And finally, in January of 2017, the governments of Malaysia, Australia, and China called off the search completely for Flight 370.
Wait, this went on
So
for years?
3 years, 3 years they searched.
Holy shit.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it was unprecedented. It had not happened before. An American company called Ocean Infinity received permission from the Malaysian government to continue searching until May 2017, when the Malaysian Transport Ministry announced that it would call off that search. So all of these countries came in and used all of these submarines, sonar, all of this stuff, and they couldn't find anything. In July of 2018, the Malaysian government issued its final report on Flight 370's disappearance. Mechanical malfunction was deemed extremely unlikely, and it said, quote, "The change in flight path likely resulted from manual inputs," unquote. But the investigators could not determine why Flight 370 disappeared. So,
I have to wonder.
theories.
I want to say really quick, I have to wonder in a situation like this, do you think that police would have investigated all the passengers to try and see if there was some sort of link to something that could have led to a hijack kind of situation?
Absolutely. That's one of the main reasons the flight manifest is so important. It has everybody's name and all of your information so that they can go back and check everybody out. And they did. And there were some sketchy characters. For example, two men on the flight had boarded using fake passports. They were from Iran, but they posed as an Austrian and an Italian. And they bought one-way ticket flights, which also kind of made people suspicious.
Hmm.
But they just flew, it's because they were both backpacking and they were actually trying to leave Iran, fleeing
Oh.
religious persecution. Um, they ended up going after they went up to China, and then one went to one country in Europe and one went to another. So they knocked these guys off the list. They were fine. Then, of course, there's always a Russian. There was a Russian and two Ukrainians who had very interesting past, to say the least. They had lots of money, lots of businesses that after the fact were determined to be completely fake, and just weird things around this Ukrainian couple and this Russian man who incidentally was seated in first class within feet of the cockpit, which is
Hmm.
also kind of
Hmm.
peculiar. Um, and one of the widows of this Ukrainian man that was on the flight said in a press conference, he will be back. And then on his daughter's birthday, the year after the crash, she posted a picture supposedly of her with him. So there's all of this talk that Russians are right now the best hackers, and they know how to hack ACARs. So they could have potentially, allegedly, changed the flight path. So hacked into that system and said that the plane turned and went south, but the plane actually went north and landed in Russia. And they think that they did something with those people, and this was all
Mm.
Putin doing nefarious things just to upset the West,
Wait, is
which
this
it
like a
did. I mean, this
conspiracy theory or is this like something that could have actually happened?
it's really far fetched.
Okay.
I think that it is possible to hack
Right.
ACARs. It is like all of those things are possible. Probable, maybe not.
Yeah, okay.
These people could have just been shifty people, you know. But the the other arc, if you'll remember, that they heard a ping from went up to Kazakhstan, which is right next to Russia and is an ally of Russia. So if they
Mm,
landed there, it could have been something possibly to do
nefarious.
with Russia. And the whole widow thing is very weird, but I mean, she could just be a little cuckoo. Who knows?
How, what
So
are,
the next,
where did this picture come from though? Did anybody look at it or determine if it was actually the guy? Like,
I mean, I don't know. I looked at it and I guess it could have been an old picture. She could be
yeah.
making it up. I don't know. There's so many different strange passengers, weird things that you can splinter off into. And there's so many conspiracy theories because it's been such a popular story.
Mhm.
But the next theory is pilot depression and
Yeah.
or murder suicide. So the newest claims revealed in the Atlantic by respected aviation expert William Langwich. I'm not even gonna try. I can't pronounce it. Sorry, William. He believes the pilot was responsible, the captain. The aviation expert suggests the most likely theory is that Shaw, the captain, I'll just call him Shaw from here this point on, either killed or incapacitated his co pilot before depressurizing the cabin to slowly kill everyone on board. So, the way that he would have done that is to go up to 45,000 feet, which they do have That satellite tracker does say that the plane did make a rapid ascent to 45,000. Once you reach that height, the oxygen masks come down because the cabin depressurizes. So you put the oxygen mask on. That oxygen mask is only meant to get you oxygen so that they can land the plane right away and get you to safety.
So
So
not long term.
there's only 15 minutes of oxygen on those. So if he stayed up there, because the 777 can fly that high, it's just not pressurized. He could have had his own oxygen because the pilots have like canisters of oxygen that
Right.
will last a long time. He could have gone up there, and then the people would have just they wouldn't have choked. They wouldn't have had felt pain. They would have just kind of passed out
Sure.
and then been incapacitated, because if this was what they're saying and he was taking 250 people to their death, I would imagine they would be trying to get into the cockpit, and they'd be unruly, and so that would be one way to get everybody whatever quiet, and then do whatever he intended to do. The former Australian Prime Minister Tony Abbott said, "My very clear understanding from the very top levels of the Malaysian government is that from very, very early on, they thought it was a murder-suicide by the pilot." And of course, the Malaysian government was very quiet about all of this, and they kind of tried to shut that down right away. But let's talk a little bit more about this pilot. So his name was Zahari Ahmad Shah. He was 53 years old, and he had been with Malaysia Airlines since 1981 when he was a cadet pilot. Early on, he trained for 2 years in the Philippines after he graduated with a commercial pilot license. He then joined Malaysian Airlines in 1983 as a second officer. So this Captain Shaw, he was very experienced. He had a total of 18,423 flying hours, including 8,659 on the Boeing 777. So he was an expert,
Was he
basically.
married or like in a relationship or anything? Do we know?
He was married. I'll get to that in a second.
Okay, sorry.
So his enthusiasm for flying was evident in his hobbies. He actually was injured in a paragliding incident in 2007. He had a radio controlled model aircraft. He even built a flight simulator himself to keep in his home. He lived in a luxury gated community.
In his house?
Yes. He was also really politically active and opposed to all of the corruption in Malaysia. And some say he was angry that day because there had been an election and the person that he wanted to win had lost. And so some said he was upset about that. So he was married. He had 3 children, although there's been reports that the marriage was rocky,
Mhm.
especially at this time. And again, like I said, he was from the island of Penang, which incidentally was exactly where MH370 turned, that second turn. So some people say maybe he was saying a final goodbye to his island, his homeland, whatever. And it's not like this guy was quiet and a loner. He had a really large online footprint with a personal YouTube channel, a Facebook page, tons of involvement in the flight simulator community. Um, and then the Royal Malaysian Police forensic report on the simulator that he had built in his home did not find any data that showed the aircraft was performing climb, altitude, or heading maneuvers, something like trying to crash the plane, nor did they find any data that showed a similar route that was flown on that day. So
Yeah.
he hadn't flown that specific route, but they did find 2 in the so it's like the recently deleted
Yeah.
section. They found 2 points, and they were deep in the Indian Ocean. So basically, where they believe the plane crashed into the ocean. Uh, but some aviation experts say it's not a big deal. He might have just been I don't remember what they were saying. Like, it could have just been an error, but some people say you only do that if you're actually going to take your simulator over there, and if you are, what's the point? Because there's nowhere to land. There's no like famous thing to look at. You know, if you're doing these flight
Mm-hmm.
simulators, you're pretending you're going on a flight. Why was he
Right.
going to Timbuktu, Indian Ocean? So there's differing opinions on that.
Hmm. Let me ask you
Uh,
really quick, going back to the wife, is there anything, has she ever come out and said anything like about his state of mind or things that he's said or any kind of like, what did she have theories that she spoke to or?
from what I could find, she hasn't said anything.
Hmm.
I couldn't find any word, and just in that culture, there was not a lot said. I mean, it was they didn't give a lot of information. The families were really upset with Malaysian Airlines because they
I bet.
gave such little information, that sort of thing. Um, but the point that he did put in that flight simulator, he had added on February 3rd. So it was about a month before that crash, the little point in the
Hmm.
Indian Ocean. So for what it's worth.
I feel like that means
Uh
something. I don't think it's a coincidence.
yeah, I agree. It seems very strange. The forensic report also concluded there were no unusual activities other than game related flight simulations. So then we have the co pilot. His name is Farik Abdul Hamid, and he has a spotless record. He's 27 years old, just starting out, really excellent aviator. The worst thing I could find about him was that he would sometimes let people into the cockpit and whatever, flirted with flight attendants. I think that's kind of standard stuff.
Mhm.
And so this is an interesting thing about the co-pilot. Allegedly, and this is from leaked information, so it's not been substantiated, but the Malaysian telecom tower located on Penang Island, which is the island that I said that he flew over, the co-pilot's mobile phone pinged from a tower on the ground on that island. So it was only a few minutes after the plane had gone off radar. So a few minutes after somebody turned off that ACARS, he tried to either turn his phone on, call somebody, alert somebody. One of those things happened. And you're not allowed to use your phone as a
Right.
pilot. It's pretty standard. They turn their phones off when they get on the plane. Sometimes they forget and they turn it off when it rings or what have you, but you're not allowed to use it. So he could have left it on and it just pinged because they were low at that point and they were close to that tower, but it's
Or
just
something shady was going on and the guy was trying to get some help.
that's uh, what a lot of aviation experts think. They think that somehow the captain was able to get the co-pilot out of the cockpit, which is very easy when you're the captain. You could say, hey, go check the wing, hey, go do this for me, and then lock him out. And that could possibly be why the co-pilot was using his cell phone in any attempt to try to save the people on the plane. So, aviation experts agree on what they believe happened to the plane, and there's two possibilities. It either ran out of fuel or he purposely drove it into the ocean. Um, and it is possible that it could have just remained on autopilot and continued to fly until it ran out of fuel. And if that is what had happened, the engines would have slowly gone out, and then the plane would have gone straight down and began a spiral, and it would spiral until it would hit the ocean at about 600 miles an hour, just completely obliterating everything. And then the other is he just purposely did a nosedive, which is what it does detect that he did go up, like I said, to 45,000. And they do detect him dropping, I think, 20,000 feet in like 20 minutes. I don't remember the exact time, but there was definitely nose diving and he went straight up. It just sounds horrifying, to be in that plane, to not know what's going on, especially if this co-pilot knew and was trying to help. It's heartbreaking.
I hope
So
that
a
those people
fellow
were dead before any of that shit happened. I hate to say that, but like, I,
passed out, I hope.
that's what I'm saying. Like, I hope they were not aware of what was going on. Like,
Yeah.
uh,
So this pilot, the captain, had a best friend who is also a pilot and flies the 777 quite frequently. And he finally came out and said he agrees and he believes that his close friend deliberately crashed the plane. He said, quote, "It doesn't make sense. It's hard to reconcile with the man I knew, but it's a necessary conclusion." And pilots, I've known a lot of pilots. My grandpa was a pilot, my mom was a flight attendant. They don't mess around. Like they're so by the book. Like they don't agree with like conspiracy theories. It's all about science, engineering, that sort of thing. And there's only so many possibilities when you're in an airplane of like what could go wrong, what could happen, that sort of thing.
mhm.
Um, the fellow pilot speculated that the mental state of Shaw's could have been a contributing factor. He said, quote, "Zahari's marriage was bad. In the past, he had slept with a lot of flight attendants." So, Jenna, you were onto something. I don't think things were going well. So, after all this effort, confusion, desperation, it does look as though this was the result of a murder suicide, but we'll never know for sure. A few psychologists and psychiatrists I looked into said that neither Shaw nor Hamid, the co pilot, had fit the description for workplace violence, which is usually somebody who has a long history of depression and aggression. They also looked very deeply into all crew members, all of the flight attendants. They couldn't find anything. Which brings me to mental health in the workplace. Like, I think this needs to be a bigger conversation. Like, a few things I can think of off the top of my head. Remember that JetBlue flight attendant who went bonkers and then opened the door and said, "I'm done," and went down the slide? Remember that?
No, no. I don't follow this stuff. Wait, I'm sorry. Like mid-flight just like popped out. I was like, I'm bye.
No, no, no. They were taxiing.
Oh.
And then there were a few flight attendants, sorry, maybe like two in the past 5-10 years that have lost it. And then some may remember Germanwings Flight 9525, where a depressed pilot purposely crashed into the Bavarian Alps on a flight from Barcelona to Dusseldorf. He actually changed cockpit rules because he had done what I just said about he told the co-pilot to use the restroom because this guy was the co-pilot. He told the captain, "You should use the restroom. You're probably not going to have time in the future." And the captain said, "Good idea." So he got out, and the co-pilot locked the door, and he went straight into the mountain. And this created a new law in aviation where two people have to be in the cockpit at all times. So I don't know if you've seen recently, but a lot of times you'll see the flight attendant standing at the door, and that means one of the pilots is in the bathroom, so a crew member is in the cockpit. Does that make sense? So they can't,
Yeah.
one person is never alone in the cockpit.
That's
That's at least what they're doing in the US and in Europe. Obviously, they weren't doing it in Malaysia because, or I, we don't know. We don't know, right?
And didn't you say that
Uh,
now they have like there's like a set of keys or something, like so they can't lock that door? Were you telling me this recently? Like flight attendants have keys now or something so that they can't get locked out? Am I making that up?
No, you're not making that up. It's just no, I think I was talking about the Germanwings
Mm,
flight. That was the sad part about it because the captain was trying to get into the cockpit and
mm.
he was using this axe that they have on board, but because of 9/11, we created cockpits that
Oh.
cannot be penetrated. So, how awful and heartbreaking is that? And you can hear that on the black box of that crash, of the people screaming and the captain saying, "For God's sakes, let me in," and people screaming, "We're gonna die." Just
Oh my God.
horrendous.
No. Mm-mm.
And then, there was another flight attendant recently who they had to, like, almost hog tie, and they had to have an emergency landing in Texas for an outburst. So it seems like we've heard a lot of these things lately, but then it's like you also have to have some perspective of like how long aviation industry has been around and how many times things have actually happened. It's
Mm-hmm.
that, like, are we just hearing about it more? Is it happening more? But mental health in general is more of an issue in today's day and age because the specifications of how we test pilots is kind of shocking. What would you guess we do with pilots, like,
Oh
in terms
gosh.
of health checks, psychological testing? What do you think we do?
I mean, what I hope and what I think, I feel like that there's probably not a lot. They probably have to pass some sort of flying courses or something, but I don't think that there's probably any mental health checks. I don't even think that they would do that. I mean, I would hope so, but I don't think that they do.
So, according to Air and Space Magazine, although the Federal Aviation Administration requires physicals every year for commercial pilots under 40 and every 6 months for those older, the FAA does not require psychological checks. The FAA approved doctors order testing only if they think a pilot needs it. And the only way that you could get that, would be to tell your boss that you need help. It's self-policing. You can't report to anybody, you just have to tell them yourself.
No, dude, these
I
people
can't
are in charge
imagine.
of people's lives. Like, you need to add mental health checks onto that. Like, require, I don't know, something that cannot be okay. That's not acceptable.
In a prepared statement, Airline Pilots Association International, the world's largest pilot union, said, quote, "Airline pilots in the United States and Canada are subject to rigorous screening prior to being hired, including an assessment of pilots' mental and emotional state. Once hired, pilots are evaluated continuously throughout their careers. All flight and cabin crew members monitor and evaluate each other while on duty." They also sleep together and like
And say, I
there's
don't know. It just that contradicts each other, right? One says that they don't do it, and then the other says excuse me, require it. I mean, I do know that it's like really hard to get a job as a flight. Is it called a flight attendant still? Is it called
it's
something
flight
else?
attendant.
Okay. I feel like there was a word. Okay. Anyways.
You used to say stewardess.
Okay.
That's politically incorrect. You say
Okay.
flight
So
attendant
flight
now.
attendant. But I do know that it's really hard to get hired. I mean, there's lots of background checks and all of that kind of stuff. So I would hope it's harder, if not just as hard to, become a pilot. But I definitely think mental health needs to be a, you know, part of it.
Yeah, yeah, and you're right. Perspective is often a casualty when it comes to plane crashes. Everyone thinks there's such a high likelihood that it will happen to them, and the fact of the matter is there's just not. Each day, 9 million people board aircraft as passengers, and we rarely hear about anything at all. But it's just, I think, because it is so terrifying, it is just a large fear for people. But our
Scary.
trust in the people up front in the cockpit is implicit, and it's ingrained. It's something we expect. But something like the Germanwings flight where the pilot did it on purpose, it really shakes us to our core. Like, crashes of any kind are rare despite the rash of them we've seen over the last year, but crashes where a pilot purposely precipitates the tragedy are rarer still. But it's happening. I mean, this is, if that's what happened this time, it would be the second time in a few years. I don't know. It seems like something needs to be done, but at the same time, it is such a safe industry and such a safe way to fly. I think these stories just really grab us because they're mysteries.
Yeah, I don't know, dude. I still think. I mean, I get what you're saying that it's safe, but they can do a little bit better, I think, right? Like there's I mean, I don't know. I feel like we can all do a little bit better, especially after the last year we've had. Everyone should be seeing a therapist right now. Like
Yeah.
we all need some mental like check-ins. So wait, after
100%, especially pilots in the past year, like with what they've had to deal with,
I
or
was going to
people
say
just
this
being
earlier. People
animals.
are such assholes. Okay, I get it. You have opinions on whether you think masks are should or shouldn't be allowed and whatever. These people are doing their flipping jobs. If you don't agree, get on a train, drive your ass. You don't have to be on a plane. It's not necessary. So stop treating these people like they're, like you said, animals. I have a real issue with people treating people in service departments or service industries like garbage because it's unacceptable and I hate it.
Yeah,
I'm
I
getting
know, it
real
drives me
fired up
crazy.
about it.
Well,
Like,
it's so absurd when you take a step back. Like people, regardless of what you think, will not put a piece of cloth over their face. When you look back at what, our
doing their
grandparents did in
jobs.
World War II, running into danger, and people won't wear masks. And then they'll say like, "Oh, well, it's a slippery slope and it's our civil liberties." And if we are not able to take your guns, trust me, we're not going to get much farther than a mask. It's so silly. We're just
It's
fighting
just
to
my
fight
whole
at this
thing.
point.
It's like businesses and airlines are a business have the right to make these rules as they see fit and like that's their prerogative and these people it's not the stewardess's fault or the pilot's fault even if that's the rules. Deal
Flight
with it.
attendant,
What did I say? Did I say stewardess? Okay. Oh
stewardess,
God. Okay. Flight attendants. My whole point is
you chauvinist
they're
pig.
doing their jobs. Like, leave them alone. Leave them alone. It's not their fault. You have a
I
problem,
love
call who was it? The union. I don't know. The government. I don't know.
I love the videos that people have taken that have gone viral of flight attendants that are like, listen, what we're not going to have today on this flight are people taking their masks off. Have you seen any of those? There's so many on TikTok, and they're like,
They
this
are
is
it's
my
crazy.
domain.
Yeah, it's just follow their rules, honestly. And I get it. Like I get no, I don't get it, but I just be respectful to people is all I'm saying. Oh,
Everyone needs mental health. Pilots are on their own level. They are fantastic human beings.
well, and the
I don't know
stress.
how in God's name they do what they do, but they have a lot more stress on them now because the airport was hellacious and now it's even worse. So for God's sakes, let's protect these men and women
Yeah.
who are flying hundreds of people through the real I can't think of it.
The real
What's
what?
the
No.
what's the word?
No.
When you're hurtling through space. Because that's what they're doing. They're hurtling our loved ones through space at 600 miles an hour.
Yeah.
Let's give them a break every once in a
Oh,
while.
totally. Oh, totally. And I don't mean when I say like they can do better, I don't mean it like in a negative way. I just mean like let's add, a mental health check-in for everyone that
Yes.
because the stress that they're under and the bullshit they have to deal with, like everyone could use that extra support. So I have to
Just being
ask,
in that tiny little space.
what do you think happened here? What's your theory, Brittany? Give it to me.
So I think what happened is it crashed, and that's what the show Lost is based on. And we're watching. Just kidding.
There's a show
I
about
think
this though, isn't there? I forget what it's called, but I've seen previews where it's like the plane went missing and all the passengers, and all of a sudden, I think the premise is like it shows up all of a sudden or something. I don't even know. I don't watch it, but I've seen
it's not based on this though.
I thought it. I don't know.
No, I think it's
It's a
like a
drama.
weird drama. Yeah, but the plane lands somewhere else and it's like another time or something.
Yeah, but I think it was like loosely, maybe. I don't know. I don't know. I was asking
I
my
love
husband.
how you're sticking with it. You're not going to drop it.
I was asking my husband earlier. I was like, plane crashes in general or like disappearing planes. I'm like, what do you think happens to them? Like, just curious. Like, aliens. I was like, I'm like, really? Really? Is that really what you think? He's like, no. He's like, I think they just crash and like it's in the abyss of the water and you can't find it. Woo.
Yeah.
But
Somebody just found a picture. Some person that has too much time on their hands looked through Google Earth and found the outline of a plane in a Cambodian forest. So that's the latest on this. I mean, it's like
has anyone
the
checked it out?
story of
Like how did like
uh,
would authorities see that and go check it out? Or we don't know.
this was very recent, and it's like an insane remote part of the Cambodian forest. I don't even know if you can get to it, but
Send some scuba divers in.
this is just this story where there's going to be lore forever of where it went and what happened and all of that. I just want to get to the bottom of it.
I unfortunately feel like everything you've told us that it seems like the pilot had some sort of like breakdown and just said I'm out of here.
Yeah.
Just sad,
Unbelievable.
which is really sad because like I understand that you can be taken to a dark place, but to take 200 and some odd people with you is just like, oh my God.
I don't buy it. I don't buy it. Like this guy didn't have a past a long past of depression.
But that we
I
know
mean, I
of, right? People hide that stuff. People are ashamed of it, especially maybe in other cultures. I don't know what that's looked at like. I mean, you don't know.
it's just so weird. It's like a doctor purposely murdering somebody. It just doesn't seem,
Doctor Death, like it happens.
but then it's so rare.
Yeah, this
I
is the
don't want to
one time it's ever
believe.
happened. It's rare.
Oh God. Please don't do it again. If somebody pilots go to therapy, please.
Seriously. Totally pivoting here. I have some interesting news not related to this story, but related to something that we talked about a few weeks ago. I don't know if you remember Sierra Hunter. I had talked about her a little bit. She was
Yes.
in Oklahoma, right? And
Hmm.
so kind of briefly, she had gone missing. Her sister was saying that they had like an erratic phone call. They thought mental health was like an issue. Again, kind of going back to mental health. I went on my website where I was kind of following these people, and they said that she's been found, but there's been no information about her at all other than she's been found. And it doesn't sound like it sounds like she's alive, but there's been no kind of follow up. And I was like trying to Google and see if like found or there's been articles that just say updated. She has been found. So I don't
Very
know.
interesting.
So hopefully
Hmm.
more information will come out and I can tell you the story of what happened, but
Not necessarily. She doesn't have
maybe
to
not.
release any
No,
information.
maybe not. And it wasn't widely covered, right? It was like a few news outlets grasped onto it. I mean, it
Yeah.
sounds like she's alive, so that's a great thing. So
Yeah, it's always good to hear one of these people that goes missing, they find them. I hope that she finds comfort wherever she is, because it's
yeah.
got to be, regardless of what's going on, if you go missing, whatever the circumstances, it's got to be traumatic.
Oh, sure. So anyway, this was very interesting. I can totally tell you went down some rabbit holes. But it's
I could have gone down a lot more with these Russians and the Iranians. I mean, there were quite a few conspiracy theories, but I reeled myself in.
well, it was good. So make sure you guys subscribe, comment, like, share with a friend, do all the things. And we will see. Well, I think we're seeing people next week, and then we're gonna be taking a small little break after that because the love
Yes.
of my life is leaving us and moving, and we're gonna take a little time off so she can have a breath and a minute to get herself sorted out in her new beautiful office. Can't wait to see.
Oh boy. Yeah, it's
I
gonna
wish
be
I could come
interesting.
help
You
set it
may or
up.
may not be see me next week from like a hovel with boxes behind me, because my whole life is
Or maybe you'll just come
being
sit right here
moved.
next
But
to me and we'll do it together, like as a
oh,
send
that
off.
sounds nice. I can just escape. I would love to.
All right.
All right, everybody. Thanks for listening.
Be safe.
And trust your gut.
Bye.
Adios.